uh,
Okay.
uh, yeah. So, well, that's really good stuff because I think a lot of people have always asked me, uh, if and or what ifs, uh, if something had been different before, and I think as a younger man, I would have said I always tried to give them something. I always tried to sympathize from their point of view and say, "Oh well, do you wish you had this?" Like, yeah, I think that would have been nice or something like that. And that's an easy example. But then as I got older, I started to realize, well, I don't know any different, and I don't know. I can't speculate from only having one way of thinking, and I can't speculate with any accuracy of like, yeah, if I had a different situation, different scenario, different, like, 20 years of experience that I've only perceived, that I would say, oh, this is better than an alternative or this. So you people always want to get answers, but it's not realistic. It's your brain has only my brain has only ever thought, this is how I live life with one limb. And would I say it's better if I had all my limbs? I don't know, because I don't know what it's like to ever experience that. So when they say, and I think if we mentor, or if we just teach our children the value of life, the value of faith, the value of gender and uh, creation, all these topics, this is all they will know and perceive. Now, if you try to tell a 5-year old, well, life is important, choice of life is important, and you give them all these different aspects of the world at 5, it's way more confusing. Where whatever your family values are, if you are a disciple of Christ and that's most important to you, if you believe in creation and that's important to you, if you believe in sanctity of life and marriage, biblical marriage, if these things are what are important to you and your family, that's what needs to be instilled in a child. And when they grow up, it's as Proverbs says, of teaching a child in the way they should go, and they won't wander from it, because that's all they've perceived. Now, maybe people would view that as, well, you're brainwashing your child and not giving them all the facts. But again, you're only saying that from a newfound perception, rather than if you had always been taught, well, Michael, you always have to live life with one limb. That's all you get to think about, because that's the reality of life. Well, my other child, you live in a Christian family, so you will only, you're going to be taught Christian values 24/7, and that's just how it is, because that's what's most important to us. And when you grow and develop your own mind and decisions, you can fight against it, but it is a lot harder when you've instilled that for 18 plus years, and you've trained that they're like, yeah, I mean, to hear that someone's going to kill a child, abort a child, is horrific now to me, because that is what I've been well trained that that's not okay.
Yeah, amen. Good. Yeah, I like that. That's good. Could you share with us
Mhm.
just your story? And people can't see this in this video right now, but I'll try to interject maybe a picture or something. But Michael, you see that he's missing one arm,
Yeah.
but he's also missing two legs from the knees down, correct? Um,
Right.
yeah. And that's how you were born. But tell us the story of how, just tell us the story of your life, of how things worked out for you.
Yeah. Well, I was born in Taipei, Taiwan, in 1992, and um, I was I was born with one arm, and it goes from my shoulder down to my kind of the elbow. There's a joint that moves there, so we think it's my elbow. And then my left leg, it goes all the way down to the heel, and then my right leg, it's after the knee, it goes about halfway down the calf, and you can see a split of the tibia and the fibula bones that are on the right side. So I'm blessed to have my knees, because there is more challenges if you don't have functioning knees. But when I was born, my biological parents, from what I understand, were Chinese and devout Buddhists. And from their belief, when I was born and they saw that I was missing limbs, they were convinced, or believed that I was this curse from Buddha, and that they must have done something wrong to offend Buddha. And so he had decided to curse their child, and the birth, and so my birth would be, being born with one limb. And with that belief, they uh, gave me up for adoption right at the hospital. And there was no question about how things were going to work. They just gave me up for adoption. And I do like to, I kind of sympathize and try and, I'll tease people from time to time as well. It makes sense if your whole belief system and your whole worldview is based. Well, this is a curse. Well, you don't keep a curse in your house. You got to get rid of it. So it was logical. They gave me up for adoption. I'm like, I don't blame them. If that's what you believe, you got to get rid of a curse. So I went straight to a state orphanage, and that orphanage kept me there for several months. Someone in America um, was going to adopt me. But in the meantime, while they're going through that lengthy process that many people experience of international adoptions, there was an American family in Taiwan that were missionaries, and they had been missionaries for about 4 years or so. And so there's not a lot of Americans hanging out in Taiwan, or at the time there wasn't. So the state orphanage had some connections, and they found out about this family in another city 8 hours away. And so they called them up and asked them if they would consider just providing foster care until the paperwork had gone through and I could be adopted by this family in America. And they said, sure, no problem. We're not really looking to adopt, but we'll provide foster care. And the orphanage wanted me to get used to Americans, being around someone that doesn't have black hair, dark skin, and just hear hear Americans speaking English and just be more assimilated to that. So I was more prepared for the transition. So I went into the Americans' home, and I spent several months there. And the wife was communicating with the woman in America, and eventually the woman in America said, we're adopting this child just because we want him to have a better life and have a better experience. Um, but we understand when you take a child in, you get attached. And if you get attached and you want to adopt them, you're welcome to do that. We just want to make sure he has a good home. That's all we care about. And so 3 or 4 months later, as my family likes to put it, they fell in love with me, and I was calling them mom and dad, and I was calling my siblings by different names. And so they're like, "Yep, this is our kid. We can't give up our child now, so we're going to ask to adopt him." And so they adopted me, and that became my family. And that was the Doherty family, and so we lived there for a few more years before we went on to America. So that was the start, and it started as a perceived curse. Spent some time in an orphanage, spent several months in foster care. I believe I was 18 months when they took me in for foster care, and then several months later they adopted me, and then a few years later we moved to America.
Hmm. So talk to us for a minute, if you don't mind, about maybe some of the challenges that you faced, that your family faced in how to assist you and help you to learn things. Because obviously, if you've only got one limb, there's some adapting that would need to take place. Can you describe some of that, maybe?
Yeah, and what's funny is a lot of the perceptions of difficulties. I actually had to ask my family years later what I struggled with, because my whole worldview, I've never felt like I was at a unique disadvantage. Visually, I could tell, oh yeah, I don't ride a bike with two hands, and I don't do certain things with all your limbs, but in my small perception, it was, well, every 2-year-old struggles with riding a bike, or 5 or 6-year-old struggles with riding a bike. Every child struggles with learning how to walk, and every child struggles with all their limbs. So we all had to learn it, and we all learned it in a different way. um, So I thought it was normal, even the challenges I had, I thought it was my normal. But my sister Rosanna, she did tell me, yeah, when you were little, I used to try to do things with one hand before I asked you to do something because I wanted to see how how realistic it was to expect you to do it. Um, and so I thought, okay, if I can do it, he should be able to do it. If I can't do it, then if he struggles, then, I can't force him to do something I can't do. Which is really funny to me now because she said there are things I couldn't do, and I would ask you to try to do it, and you would do it. You would find a way to do it, and I was like, my brain did not go to that solution. Because I just automatically want to use my other hand. So it was sometimes amazing of like, I can't do it. Maybe he can. So that was a fun thing to learn years later. My mom, I really appreciate. In Taiwan, they got me my first set of prosthetic legs. I was probably about 2 years old or so, and the feet were just made out of wood. They were hand carved feet. They really primitive technology compared to what we have today, but it was just stilts, and they strapped me into it, and mom would help me walk. And I asked mom about what it was like raising me, and she said, I never told you you couldn't do something. I wouldn't tell you you could do all the things, but there were doubts, there were fears, but I never wanted to tell that to you until something happened, and then if it was really devastating, we could talk about it. But she said, well, I always wondered if you could walk. I always wondered if you would run. I wondered if you would climb stairs. I wondered if there's a lot of things I wondered, but I would never bring it up. And I tried to help you learn how to walk, and you learned how to walk. I was like, all right, well, I don't have to tell him. I wonder if you can walk one day. It was all right. And then I don't know if you can climb stairs normally or what that will look like. And then you figured out how to climb stairs. So it's like, well, that's done. And so she's like, I always had these questions, but I just wanted to wait and see what would happen. And she filled my life, all my family filled my life with encouragement of keep trying, and you might have to think about something different. And how you do it, but you can do it. And it did turn into, they always encouraged me that I could do something. But if there was ever a time where I failed multiple times, it wasn't a conversation of like, you can't do it. It was, well, Michael, there might be some things in life that you can't do, and that's okay. If you really want to do it, you can keep trying. But you might get, there might be some frustrating times, or there might be some really hard times. And if you can't do it, that's okay. You might not be able to do everything, and that's okay. Um, so that those were a lot of the things that they instilled. And two things I often tell people about that resonated throughout my life, my childhood, through my life, is mom always said, you know, you can do anything that you put your mind to, um, and the fact that th- there might be things you can't do, and that's going to be okay. Um, so those things really helped me as a child, and they helped me all through my life of my perception of what could be done.
That's neat. That's good parents too.
Yeah,
You're blessed.
yeah,
Amen.
absolutely.
I hear you talking, and I hear you talking about the fact that you never knew anything different, right?
Yeah.
Did you ever perceive that you were less important or less valuable? Because yeah, I'm sure you probably struggled and maybe were envious. I don't know. Maybe address that.
Yeah. Hmm. My mother was man, and to this day, it is overwhelming how much love there is. And I feel like a because now being a part of the same family from 18 months, this is my family, and this is all I know. This is, and all the love and all the fun that we have. It's like, this is my family, and I had never felt like I lacked a real family. I never felt like I lacked love and care and support. Um, it has felt like a, a genuine family that is mine. And that's even part of that is I tease my family and tease others in today's society that yeah, my child rearing was kind of like some people might call it child abuse, because when I say I can't, when I'm 4 years old in kindergarten and I'm cutting paper and I say I can't cut paper, or I can't do this. My family did not say, oh, well, yeah, this is the disabled kid. We'll help him do that because he says he can't. It was, oh, well, I'm sorry, you might here, try this different, and they would give me solutions to try and teach my brain. Oh, well, I was trying to do it your way with two hands, holding the paper under my arm and cutting like I had two hands, but my way is put it on the table and cut that way while I hold it down with my arm instead of holding it with two hands. So it was never, oh, we'll do it for you. It was, oh, well, maybe try something different, or oh, well, maybe you can't do it right now, we'll try again later. It was never helping me, and it was very just like, oh, try again or do something different. It was nowadays, I tease my nieces and nephews that, like, man, whenever you said you couldn't do something, people would just do it for you. I never got that. So like, so my family, it was a very genuine experience of teasing and challenging you and mentoring and parenting. I never felt different. Now the beauty of our situation was I'm completely Asian, and my father is Irish, very white, and he grayed early. He grayed in his like 40s, I think, and mom is very American and has fiery red hair. So I was never deceived that I was I was a biological child. That was never a confusion. I was My parents told me when they took me back, just for foster care, that I was freaking out because I'd been around only Chinese people and people with black hair. And my mom said, I'm just trying to imagine your whole worldview got shooken up and you're on a train with these two white people and one of them has fiery red hair. It's just like that has to just terrify a child. So I always knew there was a difference, but the great thing, my family, they treated me as their own. I was their child. They raised me as their child. But if I asked questions about adoption, if I asked questions about my missing limbs or anything that I asked, it was free range. Anything I wanted or needed to know, it was free range information, and there's never a feeling that, oh, maybe they're hiding something to protect me or they're hiding something. Period. It was My adoption story was my favorite bedtime story as a child. It's just like, tell me when you got me. And mom would drag it out for like a 10-15 minute story. And it was great. So I knew where I came from. I knew how I got where I was. Um, and then we use October 31st as my adoption day or gotcha day, whatever term people like to use. Um, and my siblings would always say as a child, "Oh, happy adoption day." And mom is always horrified. She's like, "He's not adopted." And like he's our child. And eventually when I finally got to be a teenager, it was a constant battle every year. It's like, "Mom, I'm adopted. It's okay. Like I think I know I'm adopted. I'm missing limbs. I'm not white. I've got black hair. Like I think I know I'm adopted." So it was more of a battle with mom because she loves so much and she wants me to be a Doherty and know I'm a Doherty and there's no differentiation between children. She wants me to know that wholeheartedly. And as much as I do, saying adoption, she still wants me to understand, like, you're not adopted. It's like, mom, 20 some years, I'm adopted. It's okay. We can move on from this. But then so that was in the family. I never felt that difference. Now, as a child, children can be uncensored and cruel, and that can be very challenging. And it was challenging for some children I encountered, and there are certainly times throughout my childhood. Um, I've learned almost everything I think I've set my mind to do that I've wanted to do. but like I would love to be a great pianist, and I think I'm certain I could learn to play the piano well, but not as well as I think I should. I should be able to or would want to with two hands. So there is definitely times throughout childhood, throughout life, that it's like, yep, it'd be nice to have two hands here, or it'd be easier to have feet here. It'd be a lie to say it never crossed my mind. It'd be a lie to say there's never envious moments, but it was never something that really. I don't recall, at least, moments where it really depressed me or really made me feel un unworthy or undervalued. It was just like, that, just you don't think of this as a 6-year-old, but now it's like, out of practicality, it's like, oh yeah, two hands there, that would be nice. But and then I moved on pretty quick. So
Good. Thank you for sharing this stuff. This is good. I'm enjoying hearing it. So let me ask you this. How, and I know this is a tough question to ask, because then people are, well, I don't want to brag on myself or this kind of thing, but how has God used you, even with just one limb? How has God used your life?
oh.
I know he has, and I can share plenty of examples, but people would rather hear it from you.
And that's true, and that's always the embarrassing part, for sure. Hearing it from me, uh, I feel like there are great opportunities that I've experienced in my life that I feel I could write a book, not off of this is how great Michael was, and this is all his great accomplishments, but I feel very, very blessed and lucky for all the opportunities I've had, and most of them I just think of how fun they were and the opportunities of the people I got to interact with and what I got to do in those moments. And I'll try and make it fairly succinct in a few ideas. But what I found, one of the biggest things I found is missing limbs, and learning. The biggest part in my childhood was learning how to embrace it and how to communicate it and how to be comfortable being just an open book. Because while everyone has their challenges, some of them are not so obvious. They can be mental and emotional. Where for me, I never had a chance to hide it. Where I wear prosthetics and I wear long pants most of the time, but I could never hide the arm. And even with the prosthetic arm, that's always a lot harder to hide, versus the legs. So I had a decision as a child of, do I feel offended? Do I take it as an attack, or how do I take it in a very negative turn and make people feel bad and uncomfortable? Or when people ask me about it, am I just completely open and caring about, oh, the majority of the world has all their limbs, and so their perception or the way they address these things uh, is abnormal. So they feel just as weird, if not more weird, to ask the questions. And so I had to learn the perception of, like, man, I would much rather be able to have a great conversation with someone, and and when they ask, and let people ask, it's like, why would they know how I lost my arm? Why would they know how I lost my legs? Like, why would I assume that they should know better? People don't can't do better if they don't know better. And so if they're asking, let them into your world, let them into that perception. And the nice thing about that is, one, people just enjoy the interaction far more, and if you can do it comfortably, people feel far more comfortable with you, and all their guards and barriers and tenseness just melt away, because they're like, oh, this guy's going to answer whatever I want, and he's very comfortable in his own skin. So thank God for that. And so with it opens, but being able to do that not only uh, opens lines of communications just generally and personally, but the doors that it opens to talk about God are is immense, because anything I ask back of people, they're if you can make them feel comfortable in the situation and then enjoy the conversation, anything you ask back of them, they will 99.9% of the time answer it back, because they're, well, if you're going to be an open book and you're comfortable sharing your life, then I feel more comfortable being an open book. I feel more comfortable um, sharing my life. And that's what I love the most about the opportunities I've had. And from that, I get so many more great conversations that lead to God. I get so many just good interactions in general. And then from that, I've been blessed to uh, learn how to public speak from a young age. So it gives me the opportunity to have great one-on-one conversations with people, but then also being able to share my life with people, whether it's through preaching or through inspirational speaking, whatever the opportunity might look like. I've been able to share my life and the story of what God can do and what God has done through my life, with through many avenues, through churches, through my university. I went to a Christian university, so of course that helps, but I was asked to speak in our chapel. And through that, I was able to go through, speak at several churches. I was able to be a part of like a youth revival in Massachusetts, be able to speak at a church there, but also speak at a YMCA. And that was just I had so much fun doing those things, and then being able to speak at a public school. And through public school, there's challenges to speak about God directly, but that's where being able to hopefully inspire and encourage children that their lives, in and of themselves, have value and meaning regardless of their challenges. So that was a great opportunity to learn how to share the value of life and my life and what you're able to do, um, in a spiritual setting and an unspiritual setting. And then I've been able to share the God's story and my life story in a few international places in Ukraine and Fiji. Um, and it's been amazing, because the public speaking part, that's the easy part. The most fun is the interacting with the individuals and children afterwards, and how that can impact someone. And I think that makes it worth every bit of it. And that's why I do it. When people want me to share it, or if they want to share on my behalf, it's always a yes, because if my life can inspire and encourage, but if God can be shown through that most of all, then always yes.
Amen. Amen. I know you've had, how old are you?
28.
You're 28. No kidding. See, I still remember meeting you as a 14-year-old and you telling me that duck joke, with the grapes, I think it is, right? And the nails, or nails.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, uh, yeah, and you're 28. Wow, I've known you 14 years. That is amazing.
That is crazy. Whew.
It makes me feel old. Oh my goodness. But yeah, you have been an inspiration to me, and I know you've been an inspiration to thousands, all over the place. Just not because, I mean, it's not that Michael's something special. It's just that Michael has allowed God to demonstrate his glory through his life. I think that's what it is, that you have allowed God to show himself through you. One limb doesn't matter. God still shows himself through you, right?
Yeah, man, I appreciate that. I I absolutely hope and pray that is what is reflected most of all, because when I pass on, if people remember, if you remember the duck joke and other things about me, that's fun and hilarious. But if people, I hope that one day that legacy is someone that could speak so openly about who he is and the disability that he was given, but that none of it is possible, none of it functions, or where what he accomplished and did through his life was ever possible without God influencing it. And then, when I was 15, becoming a Christian, that not only could my life not function without God working through it, but then becoming a follower and then working within me, um, then everything else would have been pretty pointless.
Yeah. Yeah, man. That's good. That's great. That's great. This is good.
With me, I'm sure you would have met Roy Savage from Australia.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Brother Savage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of
He.
his students first introduced me to Vegemite. Oh.
Oh yes.
Oh. Wow.
Ah,
That was
well,
something.
he's the one that invited me from me having a command performance at internationals. He's the one that invited me to Australia for a
Yeah.
convention. And then a few years, like there's 2 years, 2 or 3 years in between, and I never heard from him again. And I thought, oh well, that's a nice idea. Never happened. And then he reached out and he's like, oh well, we changed the venue from Australia and we're going to Fiji. Like, would you mind if we went to Fiji instead? I'm like, no, like, oh, wherever
Sure.
you
Why not?
like. I mean, you're paying for it. I'm like, Fiji. Um, and then, but then and so I got to go judge stuff, and I got to preach there, and that was really, really an amazing experience. But it was after that trip that he was at another event with a bunch of college kids, and he started talking about me. He didn't use my name. He just started describing me and talking about my life. And the professor on the trip goes up to him and is like, "Are you talking about a kid named Michael?" And he goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "Oh, he goes to our university." And he goes, "What?" It's just a small world. It's
Yeah.
great, and I love that. I don't think there's been a time yet when people say they use an example of me, and it's just a good, funny example, or practical example. It's all related to Christ. It's all related to
Mm.
faith, and what can be done because of God. and
Amen.
and yeah, it's absolutely true. I think my mother, or it was soon after I became a Christian, that the realization of, like, oh man, if I had had a normal life and um, could have been the way it was supposed to be for some people. uh, it was interesting. It's like, oh, I'd still be in Taiwan. I'd be with my biological family. The other interesting thing is that, like China, in Taiwan, as soon as you turn 18, every boy goes to the military. So like, oh, so like, if I was born with all my limbs, I'd be in Taiwan. I'd be forced into the military. I'd be a Buddhist. Probably wouldn't know God, and yeah, I wouldn't be where I am today. And it's like, oh, and I have missing limbs to thank for that. So okay.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.